What does a catcher actually see when Shohei Ohtani steps into the batter's box? Not the swing. Not the numbers. Not the highlights that flood your timeline every morning. Will Smith sees something else entirely. And what he's confessed about Ohtani, after finally sharing a dugout with him, has left the baseball world completely speechless. Because the Dodgers aren't just winning. They're transforming. And the man holding the mask behind home plate says he had absolutely no idea this was coming. Will Smith has been one of the best catchers in the National League for years. He calls games with precision. He handles elite pitchers. He's seen the best hitters in baseball from a distance of 60 feet and 6 inches, night after night. But when Shohei Ohtani moved to Los Angeles, something shifted that Will Smith never anticipated. In a candid interview that sent shockwaves through American sports media, Smith made a confession that most catchers would never make publicly. He admitted, simply and directly, that facing Ohtani as an opponent and standing beside him as a teammate were two completely different experiences. "I didn't notice it when he was on the opposing team," Smith said. That sentence alone stopped an entire nation of baseball fans cold. Because Will Smith is not a rookie. He is not easily impressed. He has crouched behind home plate in playoff games, called pitches in World Series pressure, and managed a pitching staff filled with future Hall of Famers. And yet Shohei Ohtani still managed to show him something new. The question is, what exactly did he see? When you face a player like Ohtani from the opposing dugout, you study him the same way every other team does. You pull up the data. You review the exit velocity, the launch angle, the pitch tendencies, the zones where he's most dangerous. You build a defensive game plan. You position your fielders. You instruct your pitcher. And then, almost every time, he does something your game plan didn't account for. That is the Ohtani every opposing catcher knows. The one who makes you feel like the data is incomplete. Like there's a variable your model simply cannot capture. But Will Smith started seeing a different Ohtani altogether once the Dodgers signed him to the most celebrated contract in professional sports history. Not the statistical Ohtani. Not the highlight reel Ohtani. The real one. The day-by-day one. The one who shows up before the stadium fills, before the cameras are on, before the crowd even knows the gates are open. And what Smith witnessed in that quiet space, in the training facility, in the weight room, in the cafeteria, in the dugout before first pitch, was not what he expected. It was unusual. His word. Not dramatic. Not loud. Unusual. Professional baseball organizations are not easily disrupted. The Los Angeles Dodgers, in particular, have spent decades building systems, cultures, and routines. They have a way of doing things. A standard. A rhythm. Ohtani didn't challenge any of it. He arrived and simply raised the standard higher, not by demanding anything from anyone else, but by holding himself to a level that made the people around him reconsider what they were capable of. Will Smith described this shift not as something Ohtani explicitly said or taught, but as something he radiated. Through his preparation. Through his schedule. Through the relentless consistency of a routine that doesn't change based on whether the opponent is first place or last, whether it's April or October, whether the spotlight is at full brightness or completely off. That consistency, Smith admitted, was the unusual change. Not a speech. Not a meeting. Not a motivational poster in the clubhouse. Just Ohtani, doing what Ohtani does, every single day, without exception, without complaint, without needing anyone to notice. And the Dodgers noticed. Deeply. Since Shohei Ohtani joined the Dodgers, the American sports media has been searching for the right language to describe what is happening in Los Angeles. The numbers are staggering, yes. The home runs. The batting average. The on-base percentage. The way he approaches an at-bat with the tactical patience of a chess grandmaster and the raw power of a man who was simply built differently than the rest of the species. But the media kept returning to something harder to quantify. They kept writing about the atmosphere in the Dodger clubhouse. The energy. The standard. The way young players described feeling like they needed to earn the right to be in the same locker room. Not because Ohtani told them that. Not because anyone told them that. But because watching him operate every day made them feel the gap between where they were and where the top of the sport actually lived. Multiple reporters and analysts who cover the team described the transformation as unprecedented. Not just in terms of what Ohtani produces on the field, but in terms of what his presence produces in the people around him. This is the part that left American media speechless. They have covered dominant players before. They have covered franchise-changing signings before. But they had never quite covered a player who seemed to improve an entire organization simply by showing up and being himself. The specifics of what Will Smith observed began to surface through various interviews and team media access sessions throughout the season. Ohtani's pre-game preparation is longer than virtually anyone else on the roster. He arrives earlier. He leaves later. Every session has a purpose. Nothing is casual. Nothing is routine in the sense of being automatic or mindless. Even the things that look routine from the outside have a precision underneath them that most players don't apply to their own preparation. His approach to nutrition, which has been documented in various forms over the years, follows the same philosophy. What goes into the body is not a preference. It is a calculation. Carbohydrates timed around performance windows. Protein calibrated to recovery needs. The off-season diet is different from the in-season diet, not by accident but by design, adjusted based on where he is in the physical cycle of a 162-game marathon. Will Smith, who is himself a professional athlete with a rigorous approach to his own body and performance, described watching Ohtani's routine and feeling like he was seeing a level of intentionality he had never encountered this closely before. "I didn't notice it when he was on the opposing team. Because on the opposing team, you only see the results. You see the exit velocity. You see the home run landing in the third deck. You see the .300 average and the MVP trophy. You don't see what produces those results. You don't see the hours before the game. You don't see the discipline that makes the performance possible." Will Smith saw all of it. And it changed him. Ohtani arrived in Los Angeles with a championship as the clear objective. Not a division title. Not a deep playoff run. A championship. And the Dodgers, who have been one of the most consistently excellent teams in baseball for over a decade, understood immediately that their new centerpiece did not distinguish between competing and winning. He came to win. That seriousness, that refusal to accept excellence as a destination rather than a minimum standard, has filtered through the roster in ways that the coaching staff and front office have described as a genuine cultural shift. Young players on the team have spoken about watching Ohtani prepare and feeling something they could only describe as obligation. Not pressure. Obligation. The sense that you owe it to the teammates around you to be better than you were yesterday, because the teammate standing next to you has never allowed himself the luxury of yesterday's version being good enough. This is what Will Smith was pointing to when he used the word unusual. The Dodgers have always had high standards. They have always had talented players with strong work ethics. But there is something in Ohtani's specific brand of quiet relentlessness that operates differently. It does not announce itself. It does not seek recognition. It simply exists, every day, as the most visible example in the room of what total commitment to excellence actually looks like in practice. And when that example is standing right next to you, in the same clubhouse, wearing the same uniform, eating in the same cafeteria, you cannot pretend you don't see it. The Dodgers are not approaching the 2025 season with caution. They are not managing expectations. They are not speaking carefully about what might be possible. They are aiming, clearly and directly, for a third consecutive championship. That goal carries a different kind of weight. Back-to-back championships are rare. 3 in a row places a franchise in historical company that very few organizations have ever kept. And pursuing that goal requires not just talent. The Dodgers have never lacked talent, but a sustained psychological and physical commitment that does not waver when the season gets long and the body gets tired and the margin between winning and losing narrows to the smallest possible space. Will Smith's confession matters in this context. Because the unusual change Ohtani brought to the Dodgers is not a one-season phenomenon. It is a cultural deposit. Something that has settled into how this team thinks, how they prepare, how they measure themselves, how they define what enough looks like. It looks like Ohtani. Every single day. Before the cameras. Before the crowd. Before the game. And now it looks a little bit like everyone around him, too. There is a broader truth embedded in Will Smith's confession that extends beyond baseball. The people who stand closest to genuine greatness are almost always surprised by what they find. Not by the talent is visible from a distance. But by the foundation beneath the talent. The discipline that makes the talent sustainable. The routine that makes the extraordinary repeatable. Smith faced Ohtani for years as an opponent and saw only the surface. The home runs. The swing. The results. Standing beside him, he finally saw the structure underneath those results. The preparation. The consistency. The intentionality applied to every hour of every day, not just the 2 hours between first pitch and final out. That is the unusual change. Not what Ohtani does on the field. What he does before he ever gets there. And as the Dodgers seriously aim for a third consecutive championship in 2025, the team that surrounds Shohei Ohtani is being quietly shaped by the same standard that has made him, in the words of the people who watch him most closely, genuinely unlike anyone they have ever seen. The American media can describe the numbers. They can chart the transformation. They can write the headlines. But Will Smith already told you the real story. He just couldn't see it until he was standing close enough.